Okay, so now we're going to look at the senses. And with the senses, we need to know the organ, the sense, and the stimulus. So with the eye, we're going to, the sense is light, the sense is sight, the stimulus is light, the ear is hearing, it's sound, the skin is touch, that's our touch, and our temperature is the stimulus there. With your nose, it's smell, and that's the chemicals in a gas state. And then we have our tongue and taste, and that's dissolved chemicals. So the brain is the interpreting center for the information gathered by our sense organs. So each sense organ contains receptor cells, and they are going to respond to the stimuli, which are different forms of energy, and they're going to convert this into electrical energy, which will travel along to neurons and to the brain. So the first one we're going to look at is skin, which is our sense we're going to look at is touch. And the organ there is our skin. So it contains different receptors for pain, for touch, and for temperature. So the skin is the main organ responsible for touch. So there are touch receptors all over the skin. But the concentration of that, it varies. Now here is a diagram of the skin. You have to be able to label this diagram of the skin. And like I've mentioned many times before, if you're able to label it, you're able to draw it. So first off here, let's start at A. So coming off here from the hair, we have is the erector muscle. And this will contract or relax to allow the hair to stand up or straight. Underneath that, so if we're trying to figure out what B is our capillary, but if we look underneath B, we see two other blood vessels. One is red and one is blue. So we have our capillary, our artery there is C, and D is our vein. If you look over at F, this is your sweat gland. All this yellow part here, this is your fat. This is your adipose tissue. H is your hair follicle. Then we have hot and cold receptors. Now, branching off, what is important that we know, branching off that hair follicle up near the top of the surface of the skin, that's your sebaceous gland. And at the very top, L is our hair. So touch is a very generalized sense that's located in the skin. It involves the ability to sense a number of stimuli. So touch receptors can respond to a gentle force on the skin. Our pressure receptors can respond to a greater force on the skin. Pain receptors, they are found all over the skin. Your heat receptors, they respond to an increase in heat, and our cold receptors respond to a decrease in heat. So that's the sense. So that's your touch. Which brings us on to taste, and from our tongue. So taste is the tongue is an organ of taste. Your taste buds in the tongue, they can detect the taste of sweet, salt, sour, and bitter. So they say at the tip of your tongue, we taste the sweet, followed by the salt, followed by the sour, and then the bitter taste we taste at the back of our tongue. Which brings us on to smell. So our nose is the organ of smell. The olfactory neurons, these are in the nose, and these detect the smell. So smell and taste, they're both closely related senses. So the sense of smell is located in the nose. There's chemicals that will enter the nose along the air. So they will stimulate receptors in moist membranes at the back of our nose. And then different chemicals, what they will do is stimulate different receptors. So these then are receptors or responses are often translated into smells by our brain. Now, this brings us then onto the eye. This brings us onto sight. So you have to be able to label this diagram of the ear. So the eye. Practice labeling the diagram of your eye. So I'm going to start off first with your lens. If you're looking at this, so whether this is facing towards the left or towards the right. So we'll start off here with our lens. In front of your lens, right in front of your lens is going to be your pupil. Okay, so that's right in front of your lens. Now, your iris is there either side there of your lens with your pupil in between. To the side of your lens, you have your sensory ligaments here. And then you have your ciliary muscle. So remember, muscle will contract and relax. So in front of our pupil is the aqueous humor. And then at the right in front of that, we have our cornea. Now, if we go towards the back of the eye, we have the sclera, we have the choroid, now we have our retina, which is very important. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Now, you can see here we have a little dip in, like a little V in. That is the fovea. Now, if we follow along with the retina, before we join up with the optic nerve, this space here, this is your blind spot. So we have our fovea, our blind spot, and this then we have is our optic nerve. Now, all inside we have a fluid, and this is your vitreous fluid. Now, if we're able to label that, they may ask us to label certain parts and then give the function of those certain parts. Now, your cornea, what is its function? The function is it allows light to enter the eye. The conjunctiva, which is here, your conjunctiva, what that does is protect against infection. And sometimes you may have had conjunctivitis, so you have an eye infection. Your sclera, so that's the tough outer layer. So that's your white part of your eye. Now your pupil, very important. Your pupil is going to let light in. That's very important. Your iris is going to control the amount of light entering the eye. So that's the function. It's going to control the amount of light entering the eye. And then the response is muscular contractions to whatever that light intensity is. And then the size of that pupil may change. Your lens. So here we have our lens up here. Your lens is going to focus on the retina. It's transparent and it can change size, but the function of the lens is to focus on the retina. Now you have your blind spot, which I mentioned there before. So your blind spot, it's an optic nerve. So optic nerve leaves the eye. So what there is there's no rods and there's no cones. So it's not sensitive to light. Now your fovea, that is the most sharpest point of our vision. So back here where I talked about that little indentation there along the retina, that's the sharpest point of your vision. So it's the most sharpest point, accurate vision. Your choroid layer, that prevents internal reflection. We have our ciliary muscles that adjust the lens shape, and then your sensory ligaments that holds the lens in place. Now, your aqueous humerus, it's in front of the lens. That's not a function. That's just a statement that it's in front of the lens. But the function of the aqueous humerus is that it maintains the shape of the eye. The vitreous humerus, which is behind the lens, so all here in this green are vitreous humerus, what that is going to do is also maintain the shape of the eye. Now, your retina here is this purple line that's going all around here from either side, leading on to your optic nerve. Your retina is very important. So it's light sensitive cells. So in here we have our rods and our cones. And what they are going to do is going to convert light into nerve impulses, which will send those impulses up towards the optic nerve. Now, the rods, we need to know this. So this is a type of cell found within the retina. Your rods, the vision of the rods is black and white. So it only works within dim light. The cones see colour. Now there's many of them around the fovea, and what they work best in is they work best in bright light. So you have to be able to label the eye and give the functions of the eye. And with that is practice going over the past paper questions. Now, we also need to be able to know and draw what our pupils would look like in dim light and what our pupils would look like in bright light. So if we're in bright light, like right now, I have this light on me right now, my pupil is very small. So in bright light, we have your pupil is very small. Okay, so it's smaller. So it's letting light into the eye. In dark light, in dim light, in the evening time, your pupil is much bigger. It's more dilated. So in dim light, the iris is relaxed. So the pupil is dilated and it's going to let more light in. A question that they have asked before is, why are two eyes better than one? And the main answer we're looking for is that we have an increase of our visual field, and that's to judge our depth and distance. It can also provide us with double vision. Now, you need to know one disorder of either the eye or the ear. So I teach the ear, so I'm going to hold off that until I get to the ear. Now, let's look at the ear. And again, with the ear, you need to be able to label it. And again, if you're able to label it, you're able to draw it. So the main function of our ear is balance and hearing. Our ears are protected by wax, so that's a form of protection, how our ears are protected by wax. Our ears are also protected by our skull, so that's another thing that can protect our ears. And then wearing protective headgear is another thing to protect our ears, especially in noisy environments. Your ear is composed of 3 sections. We have the outer ear, where we have our ear. We have the inner ear, and then we have our middle ear, and then we have our inner ear. So the outer and the middle ear, they are filled with air. The inner ear is filled with the fluid called lymph. So you need to be able to draw this and to be able to label this. So on your outer ear, we have our pinna, which is just cartilage of your ear. We have also our auditory canal leading into our eardrum. So that's your outer ear. Your middle ear consists first off of 3 bones, 3 bones together, collectively called the isosceles, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Okay, the anvil, the anvil, and the stirrup. That's your middle ear. So this, your outer ear and your middle ear, is filled with air. The inner ear, your inner ear is filled with lymph. So your inner ear, we have here your cochlea, which kind of looks like a snail. From branching off your cochlea is your auditory nerve. We have up here our 3 semicircular canals, and branching off that, coming off that, is our vestibular nerve. So now we're going to look at the functions of what we've just talked about just there. So we're going to go outer ear, middle ear, and our inner ear. So your outer ear, our pinna. So it's made of cartilage. And what does it do? So it's made of cartilage. That's not a function. Its function is it's going to collect sound waves, and it's going to direct these sound waves to the auditory canal. Your auditory canal. It's going to cause vibrations to the eardrum. And our eardrum is going to vibrate sound waves. So that's your outer ear. Okay, now let's look at our inner ear, our isosceles, our has, our hammer, our anvil, and our stirrup. What do they do? The hammer first picks up vibrations from the eardrum, and then it's going to pass this then to the oval window. Your eustachian tube, sorry, I forgot to point that out. Here is our eustachian tube here. Your eustachian tube, that is going to equalize pressure. That's the function of the eustachian tube. It equalizes pressure. And that is connected to the throat. Connected to the throat is not a function, it's just another fact. Now, within our inner ear, we have our cochlea. Your cochlea is going to detect balance. And also, it'll generate impulses. That's very important. So that's going to convert vibrations to nerve impulses. Your 3 semicircular canals, it's going to control balance and detect sound. Also, what's very important that you know, it also generates impulses. So it's going to give information about movement. So there's 3 of them. Why is there 3 semicircular canals? So therefore, it's able to control the balance over 3 planes. Your vestibular nerve is responsible for balance. So it's going to carry information about the movement and orientation towards the brain. Now, again, as I mentioned there before, you need to know a disorder of either the eye or the ear, and I go with the ear. The hearing disorder I give is glue ear. Okay, so really full of like wax and pus. Not very nice looking. It's caused by a viral infection. Your main symptoms is an awful pain in your ear. And there might be pus that's leaking out a bit, or it might have dried up a bit. A corrective measure for this, if this is continuous, would be grommets. So you just could say grommets. Or it can be decongested eardrops. So this is just showing you here. Here is a grommet that's placed inside there. Now let's look at some questions of what they can ask us about the senses. So the last time here we have in section A is 2020. 2020 was the year of COVID. So but still, let's look at this. So give one function of each of the following structures in the human body. So cones in the eye, what do? They detect colour. The optic nerve is going to send impulses to the brain, to our central nervous system. The iris in the eye, so that's going to control the amount of light entering the eye. The eustachian tube, it equalises pressure. Pressure's on its own, it's not acceptable. So it equalises pressure. The semicircular canals, they control balance. Okay, not related to the senses, but ligaments join bones to bone and cartilage around the end of the bones, and that's for shock absorbers. Let's look at 2020. So in 2022 was when the eye appeared in question 16b. So the diagram shows the internal structure of the human eye. So we have here R and Q, and it's labelled for us the iris, the pupil, the retina, and the blind spot. It's asking us to name the parts of the eye labelled P, Q, and P, Q, or. P is our lens, Q is our cornea, and R is our optic nerve. Name the two light receptors cells in the retina and give one function of each type. So the two light receptor cells are the cones and the rods. The cones, the function of the cones is colour vision, and the rods the main one is it's black and white vision. Explain why damage to the part labelled OR could result in blindness. So OR is your optic nerve. So how could damage of that result to blindness? So that would mean that the optic nerve, if there's damage there, is not going to be able to send impulses towards our brain, towards our central nervous system. Describe one corrective measure for one of the following: long-sightedness or short-sightedness, or a named hearing defect. So I'm going with a named hearing defect. My named hearing defect is glue ear. In your answer, clearly state which order you're referring to. A corrective measure, grommets. Vision and hearing are two of the five senses. Name one other sense and name an organ associated with it. So that's touch, could be skin, smell could be nose, and taste could be tongue. And I've skipped one there where I have sketched two diagrams on the front of the eye to show the iris and the pupil in bright light and the iris and the pupil in dim light. So in bright light, our pupil is much smaller, and in dim light, our pupil is much larger. And then let's look at one question on the ear. So the ear here in 2011, the question that I'm looking at. So here we have a diagram of the ear, and we're asked to label the parts of the ear. So the diagram shows the internal structures of the human ear. Label the parts A, B, and C. So A is the cochlea, kind of looks like a snail's shell. B is our ear drum. And C, coming off from our cochlea here, is our auditory nerve. Then we're asked to give the functions of D and E. So D is your semicircular canal. E is your eustachian tube. So what's the function? So D, your semicircular canal, is going to control balance, and your eustachian tube is going to equalise pressure. Which letters denote the parts of the ear which nerve impulses are generated? So nerve impulses are generated in A, the cochlea, and also D, the semicircular canals. Suggest in what part of the eye are nerve impulses generated. So your nerve impulses are generated at the retina. Suggest one way by which the ears may be protected. So it could be by your skull, it could be by earwax, it could be by wearing protective headgear in noisy environments. Explain how a corrective measure of a named defect of hearing or vision works. So I'm going with hearing, my named defect. My defect is glue ear. My corrective measure is grommets. And that's the senses.